Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. This is my third attempt to try to record this message for you. Yesterday I recorded it twice, but both times the volume was too low, and I am bound and determined to share these insights from Exodus chapter 5. So here we go. Let's hope it works. We're in Exodus 5 verses 10 through 21. And I've already made a video on these verses, on verses 10 through 19, but it was like 2 years ago during the pandemic when I first started the channel. And so I'm going to recommend that you pause this video and go back and watch that one first, because this video is going to rest on that foundation. I'm just going to give 3 additional insights on Exodus 5, and it will help if you watch that first. So the overall scene is Pharaoh telling the people, no, you can't leave Egypt, and forcing them to gather their own straw to make bricks. And the other video explained the brick making system and why they needed straw for that. Today I just want to kind of hop, skip, and a jump through this scene to give you 3 more tidbits. So in verse 12, we're told, so the people scattered throughout the land of Egypt to gather stubble for chopped straw. And this is interesting because the phrase throughout the land of Egypt, in Hebrew it's B'kol Eretz Mitzrayim, but you can see it in English too. This tells us the extent to which Pharaoh is oppressing them. They have to scatter all through the land to get their straw. And it's also the same phrase used to describe the extent of the plagues. So when God brings the signs and wonders against Pharaoh, 7 of them are described as being throughout the land of Egypt. And this shows us that the punishment fits the crime, that God is not arbitrarily choosing the bounds of where to bring destruction, but that the destruction matches the extent of the oppression. I think that's really interesting. So we see this phrase used with reference to the water to blood plague, the gnats, the boils, the hail, the locusts, darkness, and death. So those 7 plagues have this phrase used within it. The second tidbit comes from verse 18, where Pharaoh is speaking to Moses, and he's been annoyed that they are so, quote unquote, lazy for not doing their work. And so he tells them, now go work, and chopped straw will not be given to you, but you must give bricks. So this phrase, go work, is very interesting because it's going to happen again in chapter 10, verses 8 and 24. Pharaoh is going to tell them, go work again, except with a different meaning. So this time he's saying, go work for me, go do the job that I've given you to do. But in chapter 10, it's the initial signs of Pharaoh finally relenting and realizing he's got to loosen his grip because Yahweh is winning. And he tells them, go serve Yahweh, but don't take all your animals or whatever. Like, he puts limits on the requests that they've made. So they've said, we need to go with our whole families and all our flocks and herds, and we need to go for 3 days. And so he keeps telling them, like, oh, maybe you could just go for somewhere inside Egypt. Maybe you don't have to leave, or you don't have to take your women and children, or you don't have to take all your flocks and herds. So anyway, as he begins to relent and begins to kind of put other conditions on it, he uses the same phrase, go work or go serve, but this time it's serving Yahweh rather than serving Pharaoh. So these 2 masters are held up as the 2 who are making claims on the Hebrews. Pharaoh wants their work for him, and Yahweh wants them to serve him. And so these 2 are at odds with each other. And the whole plague narrative is framed as a struggle between 2 masters. And so paying attention to this repeated phrase helps to highlight that. The last insight for today comes from verse 21. This one's kind of funny, actually. This is the Israelite foremen are really upset because Pharaoh's saddled them with more work to do and is making their lives really miserable. And so they come and attack Moses and Aaron. And in verse 21, they said to them, may Yahweh look on you and judge, you who have caused our odor to stink in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, to give a sword into their hand to kill us. This is strong language that's just trying to describe how they're now being perceived. The Egyptians had always looked on them with disgust, but now it's like they stink. You're making us obnoxious to them. And the reason I find this interesting is because in the first two signs that God brings against Egypt, the water to blood and the frogs, they cause a stink. The land stinks because of all the dead fish in the river and because of all the dead frogs after the plague of frogs. And so it's as if God is saying to Pharaoh, oh, you think it's obnoxious when the Israelites ask for time off to worship me? That's not obnoxious. I'll show you something that's obnoxious. And he fills the land with something that truly stinks because Pharaoh has misdiagnosed what the problem is. And this gives us like an x-ray on his heart so we can see just how lopsided his thinking is and the thinking of his people. So these are just a few tidbits from Exodus chapter 5. I think what they illustrate is the value of us slowing down and reading closely the text. And if you read these chapters slowly over and over again, the whole first 15 chapters, say, of Exodus, you'll begin to see these things, these repeated phrases. And if you look them up and compare them, you'll see the connection between them and how the author is designing this story in ways that highlight the themes that he wants us to see. So I think that's really fun. But I also feel like theologically the important thing this week is that the punishment fits the crime, that God is meeting Pharaoh on his own turf, he's playing his game, and he's besting him. And so I just think that's going to set us up really well to understand the chapters that follow. I hope this was fun for you. Spread the word if you have friends who you think would enjoy Torah Tuesday. It's always fun to hear from you, hear your comments, questions, and to hear your enthusiasm for Torah Tuesday. Thanks so much and have a great week.